I was halfway under a server rack with a cable in my teeth when Greg strolled in like a fart in an elevator. Loud, unwelcome, and way too confident for a man who still thought cloud storage meant putting files in Dropbox. Got it working? Good, he said, like he debugged it himself instead of playing golf while I stayed late again. Not even a nod. Just swagger and a smirk as he presented my fix as his own in the Monday status email. Subject line: Greg pulls off IT miracle again. By Wednesday, the miracle had mutated into a full-blown strategic presentation. Our system update, my design, my hours, my midnight coffee-fueled rewrites while Greg sent blurry Slack selfies from some hotel bar. The VP of Ops praised Greg's visionary thinking while I sat in the back of the conference room eating a cold bagel, wondering if I'd gone invisible somewhere between 2017 and now. That's how it worked at Wexley and Hart. Keep your head down, keep the lights on, and let the middle management mosquitoes suck you dry while they pitched your bones at the next leadership summit. I had 6 years in. No complaints in my file, no promotions either. HR said I lacked executive polish, which apparently meant I didn't golf, flirt, or fake laugh at Greg's jokes about how his Tesla had more processing power than Samantha's brain. I wasn't angry. Not yet, just muted. You ever feel like a screensaver at your own job? That was me. The office depended on me like lungs depend on oxygen, but no one thanked oxygen. You just expected it to be there, quiet, functional, replaceable. They smiled at me like you'd smile at a microwave. Thanks for heating the leftovers, champ. Then came the storm, not metaphorical. I mean a real-ass thunderstorm that turned the parking lot into a kiddie pool and knocked out our backup power for 3 hours because Greg thought surge protectors were overkill. I stayed late again, alone, patching code with one hand and bailing water from under the server cabinet with the other. Around 7:30, soaked to the skin, hair stuck to my face like sad spaghetti, I dragged myself toward the break room for stale coffee and whatever sugar-free sadness someone left in the vending machine. That's when I saw him, the new guy, coveralls, mop in hand, standing near the server hallway like he was trying to figure out which pipe would explode next. He had kind eyes and a weirdly calm energy, like a guy who's seen worse and still chooses decaf. I nodded. He nodded. Then my stomach growled so loud it echoed. I blinked, looked at the damp sandwich in my bag, and without thinking offered half. Turkey, provolone, and that sad lettuce that's always halfway to being soup. He looked surprised. Sure, he asked, and I shrugged. If I die of electrocution in this hellhole, you'll be the last person I fed. That's biblical or something. He laughed, took it. We ate in silence on opposite sides of a folding table, listening to rain hammer the windows and Greg's motivational playlist echo faintly from his office. Didn't talk much, just nodded at my badge and said, "You do the back-end stuff?" I nodded. Figured, you've got that I fix things nobody appreciates vibe. I snorted into my coffee. Wow, thank you, maintenance Yoda. He smiled and went back to chewing like it was the best thing he'd eaten in weeks. And in that moment, brief, soggy, unremarkable, I felt more seen than I had in 6 years of performance reviews. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't networking. It was just human. If you've ever been that person, overworked, underrecognized, silently screaming into microwave coffee, then you get it. And if this story hits home, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and give it a like. 90% of you ghost me harder than Greg ghosts accountability, and honestly, it keeps the team going knowing someone's listening. Back to the story next morning, Greg waltzed in again, stealing credit for a database patch I pushed at 1:13 a.m. I know the time because I took a screenshot of the Git log while eating dry cereal out of a coffee filter. See, he told the VP. We keep Samantha on for the grunt work, but the real ideas come from the top. That's when I realized something was shifting, not outside, but in me. The numbness was cracking, not rage, not yet, but awareness. Like the moment before a bulb burns out and finally flickers to life. And in the corner of the office, that same quiet maintenance guy mopped the floor like he was listening to every word. 2 weeks later, Greg rolled into the all-hands with a fresh haircut and a suit tight enough to make his midlife crisis audible. He stood in front of the projector like he was about to propose marriage to a PowerPoint slide. Exciting times, folks, he said, like he was auditioning for a soap commercial. Realignment is coming. The board wants agility. Innovation, we're shaking off dead weight, that phrase hit me like a brick to the kidneys. I glanced around. No one flinched, not even the ones who were dead weight. They just nodded like bobbleheads in a company car commercial. I'd heard whispers about a leadership change, someone new coming in, high-level restructure, all very hush-hush. But this was the first time Greg had mentioned it out loud. We'll be redistributing responsibilities, he continued, elevating key players to meet the new vision. And yes, that means some of you will be shifted away from legacy functions, legacy. Another polite way of saying, sit down, you're in the way. By noon, I got the email. Hi Samantha, effective immediately you'll be transitioning off the Sequoia client project. Please hand over documentation to Lucas and shift your focus to server-side maintenance tasks. Best Greg, I stared at the screen. The Sequoia project was mine. I had nurtured that beast from the womb. Late nights, early mornings, skipped vacations, I built its data architecture from scratch when Greg couldn't even pronounce SQL correctly. I'd fought to keep it alive when the client threatened to pull out. My blood was practically in the circuit boards. And now, I was being demoted to digital janitor while Lucas, Mr. What Does the F12 Key Do? Stepped in to shake hands and collect kudos. I marched to Greg's office, knocked twice, then stepped inside before he answered. He was mid-email, probably plagiarizing my documentation again. I'd like to understand the shift, I said, calm but direct. He didn't look up. It's above your pay grade, that's what he said. Not it's strategic. Or you've done great work and we're evolving roles. No, just it's above your pay grade. I swallowed the scream bubbling in my throat. I architected that project, Greg. I've spent 2 years, he raised a hand, and we appreciate it, but you're better suited to systems, not clients. Let's play to your strengths, okay? Strengths? What strengths? Being invisible, being tolerable, not making men like him uncomfortable. I nodded, jaw clenched so hard my molars buzzed. Course, wouldn't want to play outside my lane. Exactly, he said, grinning like I'd handed him a gold star. Team player. Love that. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of movement down the hall. The maintenance guy. Mike, I think someone called him once, though no one really remembered. He was standing by the printer, mop in hand, watching the whole thing. Not intrusively, just present. We locked eyes for half a second. He didn't speak, didn't raise a brow, just gave the smallest nod, like he'd seen this play out 1,000 times before and already knew how it ended. Back at my desk, I deleted the Sequoia project folder from my bookmarks. Not out of surrender, out of spite. If they wanted me in the basement of the code, they'd get exactly that: cold, clean, unremarkable. No extra effort. No grace-saving patches. No hero moments at 2 a.m. that afternoon. Lucas emailed me asking where to find the client's data schemas. I replied, you'll want to start with the onboarding brief from March. If you can't find it, ask Greg. He wrote it. The lie tasted delicious. And as I pressed send, I caught Mike walking past again. He didn't look surprised. Something about the way he carried himself, quiet, observant, like a man who'd seen too many lies wrapped in neckties, made me wonder, what did he know? And why the hell was he always nearby when Greg decided to punch down? I didn't have answers, just a new shift in my gut. The numbness was still there, but now it had a pulse, a warning bell in the dark. Greg thought he was ascending, but someone else had started taking notes. The corporate memo dropped at 9:06 a.m. like a grenade in a swimming pool. Leadership transition, incoming CEO to be announced Q3. No name, no background, just a stock photo of a handshake and enough buzzwords to give a motivational speaker an aneurysm. By 9:08, Greg was pacing the hallway like he'd just been crowned Prince of Silicon Valley. Big things coming, he said to anyone within earshot, adjusting his tie that hadn't seen a dry cleaner since pre-pandemic. The board wants boldness, disruption, vision. I half expected him to break into a text monologue about synergy and his childhood lemonade stand. By noon, he'd printed a new placard for his desk. Greg Mallory, VP of Strategic Operations. Never mind that his title had been Senior IT Manager since the Obama administration. He printed it on the good cardstock, laminated, glossy as sin. He sauntered into my cube with his usual cologne cloud of ego and Axe body spray. Need you off the client demos, Samantha. We're leaning into presentation-forward thinking. You understand. I built the demo stack, and you've done great groundwork, but we're transitioning. Big leagues now, they want charisma. Confidence, presence. He didn't say not you, but it hung in the air like cigarette smoke. He didn't even have the decency to look uncomfortable. Just smiled like a man who thought leadership meant memorizing buzzwords and hoarding credit. I said nothing. Just nodded and went back to cleaning up the API documentation Lucas had butchered. Again, that became the new normal. Greg puffed his chest in meeting rooms, flashing his fake VP title while I rebuilt client systems behind the scenes. Every broken workflow, every late-night ticket, every critical hotfix that came down the line after 5 p.m. somehow always landed in my lap. And I took it, because I had no choice. Because someone had to keep the wheels on while the clowns danced in the spotlight. It was a Tuesday when things shifted again. I stayed late. As usual, the office was dead quiet except for the low hum of fluorescent lights and the ghost of Greg's Spotify playlist still haunting the break room. I just closed the last support ticket and was packing my bag when I saw it, a thermos, sitting dead center on my desk like a question mark. Stainless steel, no brand, clean. Taped to the side was a folded post-it, faintly wrinkled. Scrawled in neat block letters, thanks for the sandwich, no name, no smiley face. Just that. I looked around. Empty cubes, locked offices. The janitor cart sat untouched by the elevator. It wasn't store-bought coffee. I unscrewed the lid, still warm, cinnamon, something faintly nutty. The kind of brew you don't get from our vending sludge or Greg's sad little Keurig. I smiled despite myself. It was small, almost stupid. But after months of invisibility, it felt like someone had pulled a blanket over my shoulders in a snowstorm. I didn't drink it, not yet. Just held it in both hands and stared out the window at the parking lot, dotted with oil stains and one lonely Prius with a crooked bumper. Greg thought the game was rigged in his favor. But someone was watching, not liking, not commenting, just watching. And I had the funny feeling they weren't watching him. They were watching me. Thursday morning's status meeting was the usual hour-long hostage situation, complete with stale donuts. Greg's nasal baritone and a slideshow so dense it should have come with a warning label. Slide 12 was where things detonated. "We've had a few delays," Greg said, clicking to a chart that looked suspiciously like the one I'd sent him, with the wrong labels swapped in. "Unfortunately, Samantha's been slow to adapt to the pace of our new leadership expectations." I blinked. Slow to adapt? The room shifted. You know that collective silence when a fart slips out in church. That was the sound. 3 VPs blinked at their coffee cups. Lucas coughed into his sleeve. Greg sipped water like a lizard and moved on. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to say, actually, I pulled 3 all-nighters to fix Lucas's code, while Greg was too busy inserting himself into Slack threads with +1 great idea team. Like he'd invented synergy. I wanted to explain how I rebuilt the entire client-side architecture during the migration meltdown, while Greg went off-grid on a strategy retreat, at Palm Springs with his MLM cousin Chad. But instead, I sat there, hands folded, face calm, the usual corporate coma. I knew how it would go. Speak up and you're emotional, push back and you're difficult, let it slide and they assume your furniture. By 3 p.m., I had an email from HR. Subject, performance alignment check-in. I clicked it open. One-on-one scheduled. Some behavioral concerns have been raised. A written warning had already been drafted. The gall. The absolute audacity of a man who still printed out his passwords and taped them under his keyboard, flagging me for tone and interpersonal inflexibility. The next 3 days were hell. Lucas locked himself out of the Git repo. Twice. A client-side bug crashed the billing widget and Greg, instead of owning it, asked me to make the ticket disappear before the quarterly report. I did because if I didn't, no one would. I was staying later, eating worse, sleeping less. The coffee thermos stayed on my desk, clean, unused. I didn't want to drink from it, I wanted to preserve it, a totem. A reminder that someone somewhere saw me. Friday, 7:42 p.m. Everyone was gone, lights low. I was rerouting logs through a backup parser Greg didn't understand when I heard the soft squeak of wheels. Mike, he was pushing the mop bucket, moving slow like he had nowhere to be. Same calm face. Same coveralls, same quiet. Long week, he asked, voice low. Depends, I said. Are we talking dog years or Greg years? He chuckled. Rough day, I shrugged. Just another round of who needs a scapegoat? He nodded, leaned on the mop handle like it was a walking stick. Most systems fail quietly, he said. Leaks don't start as explosions. They start as a hiss, something tiny. Forgotten, I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't just talking pipes. Neglect ruins more than sabotage ever could, he added. We stood there in the hum of server fans, the buzz of vending machines, and the slow creak of a building built on duct tape and denial. You ever do everything right, I asked, and still get called an assistant? He didn't blink. Every day for 12 years, he said. That stopped me. I tilted my head. What did you do? He smiled. I waited, took notes, watched the pipes. I laughed, tired and bitter. Well, maybe one day they'll promote me to chief pipe watcher. He smiled again, faint. Maybe. He didn't ask for details, didn't offer advice. Just let the silence stretch like a warm blanket over an open wound. When he left, I sat back in my chair and stared at the warning email still open on my screen. Something had changed in the building. I could feel it. Systems were failing. And this time, I wasn't the only one who noticed. Greg swaggered through the office like he'd just won The Apprentice. I mean, off the record, he said way too loudly by the espresso machine, the CEO pick is basically confirmed. Let's just say it's someone who appreciates initiative. He said initiative like it was code for licking boots and buying the right people whiskey. I stood 10 feet away waiting for my decaf, pretending not to hear, while he did his usual routine, peppering junior staff with half-truths and vague promises, fishing for whispers, baiting rumors like some desperate puppeteer convinced he was pulling the world's strings. Later, he cornered Lucas and slapped him on the back. Keep playing ball. You'll be in the room when decisions get made. I've got plans for this team. Plans. Greg had plans the way toddlers build sandcastles, lopsided, fragile, and doomed the second real weather hits. But still, the office fell in line. People started copying his buzzwords, rearranging their resumes to align with executive vision. Slack channels buzzed with brown-nosing. The culture turned cult-like overnight. I kept my head down. Finished 3 bug fixes no one thanked me for. Watched Lucas botch another client walkthrough, and then spin it into a learning opportunity. Watched Greg take a call during my security audit review, and then cut me off to summarize the highlights, which he got wrong. Again, it was Wednesday afternoon when I noticed something strange. I was walking back from the printer, same route, same creaky tile near HR, when I glanced up. The boardroom on the mezzanine level had glass walls. Usually I ignored it. Today, someone was in there. Alone, Mike. Not in coveralls this time, at least not the dirty kind. Just a crisp gray zip-up and a blank expression standing at the edge of the long oak table. He wasn't mopping, wasn't cleaning, was just observing, hands clasped, still. Watching 3 men in suits argue over something on a tablet. He didn't look at them. He looked at me. And then he did something strange. He nodded once. Not a greeting, not a wave, just a quiet, deliberate acknowledgement, like we were both in on something neither of us had said aloud. I kept walking. My stomach twisted itself into a knot so tight I could feel it in my jaw. Back at my desk, I tried to focus. API test logs, team storage permissions. A notification popped up on my screen. Outlook calendar invite, executive briefing 9 a.m. conference room A attendance required. No sender. Just system admin. No description. No guest list? I stared at it for a full minute. My mouse hovered over accept. I clicked it. The meeting slotted itself into my calendar like it had always belonged there. I asked around quietly. Lucas didn't get it. Jenna in accounting didn't either. But I saw Greg standing near the elevator later, joking about how exciting Friday's gonna be. He hadn't seen me, but he got the invite, so did the CMO, so did 2 members of the board. I didn't breathe much that night. I went home, fed my cat, made instant noodles, then sat on the edge of my bed replaying every conversation I'd had with Mike in the last month. How systems fail, how people fail, how sometimes you just have to wait. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat breakfast. I ironed my cleanest blazer, which still smelled faintly like printer toner and resignation, and packed a copy of the latest Sequoia infrastructure map into my tote bag. Just in case, I had no idea what was coming, but someone had put me on that list, and I had a feeling it wasn't by accident. I got to the building at 7:43 a.m. The sun hadn't even finished dragging itself over the skyline, and the whole office complex looked like a paused crime scene, too quiet, too sterile, too full of something waiting to happen. I didn't park in my usual spot. I parked 2 rows over, closer to the loading dock. Like changing that one small routine might shift the rest of the day back into something that made sense. It didn't. Inside, the lobby hummed with silence. Not a soul in sight except the security guard flipping through a clipboard like he was actually being paid to notice things for once. Then I saw him. Mike, not mopping, not carrying tools. Wearing a charcoal gray jacket, sleeves pushed to the elbow, black slacks pressed so sharp they could slice glass. He stood near the gold-plated executive elevator like he belonged there. Not waiting for instructions, just calmly existing where no one had ever seen him stand before. 2 security officers flanked him, not escorting, accompanying. And when the elevator doors opened, that elevator, the one Greg once joked was strictly for people who make 6 figures or more, Mike stepped in. One of the guards caught me staring and gave me a polite nod. The doors closed and my sense of reality went with them. I pulled out my phone. Greg had already texted. Greg, 8:01 a.m., hope you've got coffee, you'll need it. The smugness dripped through the screen like hot grease. I should have said something, should have replied. But what? Hope your last name looks good on an unemployment form. Instead, I slipped my phone back into my coat pocket and walked to the main elevators, my elevators. The ones that stuck, groaned, and sometimes played Christmas music in April. I stepped in alone. The ride up felt longer than usual, like the building itself was holding its breath. I hit the 8th floor, conference room A. When the doors opened, the hallway was dimly lit and quiet. A few scattered assistants were setting up coffee trays and nameplates. Everyone moved like they were trying not to wake something. I stepped into the lobby, straightened my collar, and approached the front desk. The receptionist, Marla, looked up from her tablet. Her eyes flicked to me, then the screen, then back again. And then she smiled. Not her usual tight-lipped "oh, you again" grimace. This was different, warm, a little amused, like she'd been expecting me. "You're on the list," she said, just like that, like those 4 words explained everything. I tried to smile back, but I think it came out crooked. "Do you know what this meeting is about?" I asked. Marla tapped a few things, and gave me a look like she wanted to say more, but she didn't. She just handed me a crisp folder with a gold Wexley and heart logo and a thin badge clipped to the top. Executive briefing confirmed access Samantha F. Carson, not support engineer, not technical lead, not assistant to the guy who talks like LinkedIn is a religion. Just my name, clean, centered, unapologetic. Behind me, someone laughed too loudly near the vending machines. Sound echoed like it didn't belong here anymore. I walked toward the conference room. My heels clicked across the polished floor louder than I expected. Inside, the table stretched longer than I remembered. Half the chairs already had place cards. Greg wasn't there yet, but I was. And someone somewhere had decided that I belonged in that room, not to take notes, not to hand out binders, but to be there. Whatever came next, I wasn't just ready. I was watching. The clock on the wall read 9:01 when I pushed open the glass door. Not 9 o'clock, not 9:02, exactly 9:01. The boardroom was full, every chair occupied, every posture stiff and alert, like they'd all been called to a firing squad and weren't sure if they were holding the guns or standing in front of them. Leather folders, polished tablets, suits that probably cost more than my car. I could smell the nerves under the cologne. Greg sat 3 seats in from the head, legs crossed like he'd already signed the welcome letter. His eyes caught mine as I stepped through the doorway. And just like always, he weaponized the silence. Fashionably late, he smirked, loud enough to bounce off the walls. A few board members chuckled, not because it was funny, but because that's what people like them do when someone who smells like money makes a joke. I opened my mouth. I don't even know what I was going to say. Probably something simple, polite, neutral, something safe, but I didn't get the chance. Because the man at the head of the table, that seat, the one I had never seen anyone but the founder sit in, cleared his throat and raised a hand. Everyone turned toward him. And that's when it hit me. Tailored navy suit, crisp white shirt, a black watch with no brand, no mop, no bucket, no coveralls. Mike, the maintenance guy. Only now he wasn't watching the room from the shadows. Was the room? She was with me, he said calmly, like we were just two colleagues arriving from the same elevator. Every pair of eyes snapped back to me. Some blinked. One man coughed. Greg? Greg went still, not frozen, not confused, just still, like his body didn't know what expression to wear. He began, but Mike was already opening his folder. Before we begin, Mike said, voice sharp, but even I want to thank everyone for coming on short notice. I know there's been speculation. He didn't look at Greg when he said it, but everyone else did. Greg tried to recover. Wait, sorry, are you? Mike smiled, just barely. I've been working here for 5 weeks, observing, listening, watching how the company functions when titles walk out of the room. Greg looked like he'd swallowed a stapler. So you're the new CEO? Mike didn't answer. He didn't need to, the room already knew. He turned back to his notes. In that time, I've seen systems fail. Quietly, repeatedly. And people like Samantha here, he glanced at me just once, keep those systems alive without applause, without backup, without credit. The air shifted. Greg leaned back in his chair like he was trying to disappear into it. His face wasn't red, not yet, just colorless, bloodless, like someone had unplugged him from the grid. I stepped forward slowly, still holding my folder like it was armor. Mike gestured to the empty seat directly beside him. For today's purposes, you'll be sitting here, not a suggestion. A placement. I walked past Greg. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. I could feel the panic radiating off his skin like heat off a busted server. The chair was soft, cold, important. I sat down, opened my folder, and for the first time in 6 years, I didn't have to take notes because I was the note, and the game had just changed. There's a silence that happens when power changes hands. Not with noise, not with applause, but with a pause, a ripple in the room where everyone realizes in real time that they've misjudged the rules of the game. That's what filled the boardroom after I sat beside Mike, the new CEO. Not the janitor, not the maintenance guy, not the nobody with the mop. Just Mike. And the man at the far end of the table, older, silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, finally broke the silence. He was legal counsel, I remembered, Terrence something. Usually stone-faced, polite to the point of robotic, but now he was intrigued. He leaned forward just slightly, squinting at Mike like he was seeing him for the first time. You've been working in building operations? He asked carefully. Mike smiled. Some of you know me as Mike from maintenance, but that was intentional. Chairs shifted. Throats cleared. A couple of board members exchanged wide-eyed glances like they'd just realized they'd been playing poker with a card counter. Greg tried to laugh. That nervous, we're all friends here kind of chuckle he used when trying to buy time. So this is like an undercover boss thing? Mike didn't laugh. No, this is a due diligence thing. Greg blinked. Oh, so, you're really the new CEO? Mike leaned forward just slightly. Greg, I've been sitting in this building for over a month. Watching, listening, talking to the people you walk past every day without seeing. He flipped a page in his folder. I've eaten lunch next to our junior developers, spent afternoons with copy room staff, watched how tech requests get escalated, how credit gets taken, a pause, a glance at me, or not taken. Greg finally looked at me again. His face was trying to recover. Eyes darting between board members like someone had swapped the test answers on him mid-exam. Wait, this isn't, there must have been some breakdown in communication. No one told me. Mike held up a finger, not rudely, not forcefully, just enough to silence him. I asked to see how this company runs when titles don't walk into the room first, when the script is blank and the cameras aren't rolling. He looked directly at Greg. You failed that test. Greg opened his mouth, then closed it again, like a fish that finally realized the bowl was leaking. Mike turned his attention back to the table. Some people in this company perform for an audience, and some people carry the show when the curtain falls. I've met both. He turned to me. Samantha Carson is one of the few who passed. My heart stuttered, not from pride, not even from shock, just from relief, this raw, stunned, holy relief like someone had finally found the black box after the crash and said, yes, you were right, this happened. The silence around the table was different now. Not tense, not confused, respectful. Mike continued, calm and surgical. The realignment memo you all received was step 1. Today is step 2. Over the next 48 hours, there will be performance reviews conducted for key department heads. Leadership interviews, restructuring discussions. Greg paled visibly. His jaw clenched like it was trying to detach itself from his skull and flee the room. But today, Mike said, is about accountability. He tapped a pen against the table. And recognition. And for the first time since I'd walked through Wexley and Hart's glass doors 6 years ago, I wasn't just in the room. I was part of the reason it existed. Mike opened the folder with the kind of quiet precision that made everyone straighten their posture 2 inches. No theatrics, no need to raise his voice, just the steady flip of pages that suddenly felt a lot like verdicts being read. Let's discuss leadership changes, he said. The words were simple. But in that boardroom, high ceilings, leather chairs, and too much cologne, they dropped like thunder. Greg sat up straighter. I think we should pause here, he stammered, his eyes darting toward the other board members like one of them might throw him a rope. This feels highly irregular. I mean, procedure-wise. Mike didn't look up, just turned a page. So is stealing credit from the person who built your last 3 proposals? Greg froze mid-sentence. Mike slid a printed audit log across the table like a playing card. We have version histories, timestamp commits, document metadata. The files you submitted to the Sequoia client as your own, the architecture you claimed you wrote for the UX revamp, he paused. Looked up. All Samantha's. A beat passed. 2 board members leaned in. Terrence, the legal counsel, reached forward and pulled the logs toward him without a word. Greg's mouth opened slightly, then closed. No rebuttal, just this dull, twitching silence like his body hadn't caught up to the fall yet. Mike glanced at Terrence, then gestured lightly. Let's begin the performance review, starting with Greg. The phrase was clean, surgical, no venom, no raised tone, just a quiet sentence that detonated like a grenade in Greg's gut. One of the assistants walked to Greg's seat and laid down a sealed envelope. Greg didn't touch it, didn't blink, just stared, still. And then another envelope, this time placed gently in front of me, but not sealed. I opened it. Inside, a revised organizational chart. Wexley and Hart Technology Division. I scanned it once, stopped halfway down. Chief Technology Officer, Interim, Samantha F. Carson. I blinked, not because I didn't believe it, but because I wasn't sure if my eyes were finally showing me what my hands had built all along. There was no ceremony, no applause, just the quiet click of Mike's pen as he wrote something in the margin of his own folder, then nodded once, almost to himself. Greg was still staring at me. His lips moved slightly, like he wanted to form a protest, a joke. Come back anything, but nothing came out. Nothing could come out, not in the face of logs, facts, eyewitnesses, me. I didn't gloat, didn't smirk, I sat still. Because for the first time in 6 years I could, still, seen, heard not the assistant, not the grunt, not the safety net for a man who mistook arrogance for leadership. I was in the room, and not because I clawed my way in, because I'd earned it. Greg faded into the blur of faces as Mike turned the page and said, "Let's continue," but I didn't hear the rest. Because the final image burned itself into the room like smoke from a quiet fire, Greg, frozen in his chair, and me, finally still. Exactly where I was meant to be. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.